Welcome to Living with Purpose with host Todd Novaczyk. In this episode, Todd joins Chef Michael Davis on site at New Perspective Arden Hills, where they explore the art of crafting thoughtful, nutritious, and delicious menus for older adults.
Good afternoon, Michael Davis.
Yeah.
So welcome to our podcast here at Arden Hills, New Perspective Senior Living in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I'd love to maybe have a discussion with you today about how we at New Perspective and how you lead your team to deliver the very best food, the best hospitality at every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 365 days a year. So thank you for coming. But before we get going, maybe could you tell us just a little bit about your background and how you got to be sitting in this position as the director of culinary operations for New Perspective?
So I started off cooking really young, 6 or 7. I talk about this number of times. My first meal that I abominated was a BLT, something very simple. And bread was dry. There was no sauce, so I learned right away. My mother, she critiqued very well, very hard. And she gave me her honest opinion. And I remember that for, to this day. So starting off with that inspired me every day now. Whenever I cook, whatever I put it, whatever I do, I want to make sure I never get that reaction.
What kind of food is coming into being delivered into our back door?
Sure.
Where do we begin? What products are we? And I know you've got a very special program that gets us a really fabulous product that you're bringing into the back door.
So what you're talking about is menu development. So the first thing we do is, and I really appreciate that, we get CSDs. We get
Clarifies that
culinary services director
in every one of our
community. Yeah, we get other CSDs involved regionally, involved in our menu development and our planning. New Perspective is stretching, east and south and things like that. We're not just the Midwest, and so we want to adjust our menus to that too.
Right.
We continue to, as we say, evolve and pivot our menu.
And so what you're saying to me is that you actually look at foods for Pennsylvania that maybe is a down home cooked meal, but also for in Indiana or in North Dakota and everything in between. So go ahead and tell me now, how do you come up with a menu development and get the actual products here?
So we get those guys together, and then we get together in meetings with the Resource Center. We also get our food providers and Gordon Food Services and Martin Brothers, and we get our dietitians, and sometimes the nurses get involved. And we'll look at our menu templates, and we'll look at the year before, and we'll look at it and we'll say, okay, guys, what worked, what didn't work, and why?
Yeah.
And let's take those things off. And then we want to incorporate some new things. So now the new things that come in, we use our food distributors a little bit, but this is where we use the creativities of the culinary service directors and our culinary service managers to come to the table and, hey, let's introduce something. Let's see, let's bring a plate. Let's bring in some pork shanks. Let's bring in some short ribs. Let's try this on the menu. And then we need to taste. We need to present these items, and then we need to test them actually in communities, in multiple communities.
Okay.
And then we bring all that feedback back to our meetings. We all get together and we say, hey, this is what our community said about this. This is the do's and the don'ts. Doesn't necessarily mean that, if something doesn't work, doesn't necessarily mean we're going to take it away, but how can we make that feature better before we take that away?
Right.
So we get that going again. We'll practice that again, and then finally, after we get our costing and we get our nutritionists, and they tell us, hey, we can't do this. You got to take this back, get the salt out of there, and we go through that battle all together. Then we make a nice 5-week cycle menu. We'll all get together.
Please stop there, because I think it's really important for our audience, people who are looking at senior housing for their loved one, whether it's their mom, their dad, their neighbor, their uncle, their aunt, whoever it might be, or themselves.
Yeah.
Explain that, because I think food is so important in a senior community? Because if you think about eating a breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner, for the most part, every day in this beautiful community here in Arden Hills, where we are,
Sure.
Arden Hills, St. Paul. Sure. So you're talking about a 5-week, which to me is very often changed. So explain what you're talking about.
We change our menu cycles twice a year. We do a fall, winter, and then we do a spring, summer, and they're all about that 6-month range. Now, the unique part of our menus is that we have 2 days, Tuesday and Saturday, that we call a chef special day, where we give our culinary service directors and their communities the flexibility of creating the menus that day within our guardrails. We also have what's called a dining room menu, which is the alternate that we develop through our CSDs, through our resident feedback, things like that.
So you give them other alternatives.
We give them all alternate, but if a resident is adamant and it's lunch or dinner and they want that ham and cheese omelet, we will not say no.
So what you're saying is, though, you want to make sure you're able, with the equipment we have and the products we have, you want to make sure, though, we're delivering the very best product.
Yeah, but hey, that's what it's all about, and residents really appreciate that. They know too. They'll call you out when they know something's not fresh or if it's not authentic or whatever that may be. So that's very, very, very important.
So scratch cooking is something that I think we've been known for a long time, but it sounds like you're taking it to another level. Yeah. One thing I'd like to talk about is how do you source your products? Because, what comes in the back door eventually makes it into a beautiful plate of food, hopefully. And I know everything we do is from scratch. We do scratch cooking. So maybe you could explain a little bit about where do you get the majority of your products, and how do you determine which ones to choose and which ones not to choose?
The choosing of those products, again, it comes from those multiple cuttings we do twice a year, where we actually go to our distributors and we test some 75 to 80 products. So you'll gain 10 or 15 pounds coming out of there.
I'd just like to give you an opportunity, maybe in closing here, to say to our audience who may be watching this podcast about whether I help my mother transition from a private home or apartment where she may not be getting good nutrition or not be hydrated. I'd like you to speak to that son or daughter or loved one, why it would be best if they could come into a community like one of our New Perspective communities or any senior housing community where they would get the kind of attention you and your team provide.
Yeah, they've done for themselves for 50 or 60 years, and now they're coming over to us. The way we look at it is, how would we want our moms and our fathers and our grandmothers, how would we want them to be treated?
Right.
And that's what we think about every day.
I want to thank you for this time today, but more importantly, I want to thank you for the heart you have for training and developing people, because I see that in all of our teams. Yep. And I want to thank you for your heart for the senior resident who lives in one of the New Perspective communities. Yep.
Thanks for watching. We've got more great perspectives coming up in future episodes. So be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out.